do not support the Proud Boys or their ideology. Public safety doesn't support that ideology. And the fact that they came here was very, very unfortunate. With that said, I want to really emphasize that, we, through every situation, we try to learn. And with this situation this weekend, we're going to learn from it. And I want to first say that, preparations have been made were made for this event on Saturday, with the understanding that it was going to be a peaceful protest. Now, I understand too that the Proud Boys have a history of violence, and we were prepared for that. And the plan was executed by public safety based on what we knew at the time happened. So with that said, I know there were arrests made that shouldn't have been. Our officers were doing their job the best they could at the time under the circumstances that were there. In hindsight, sure, we shouldn't have arrested people from Kalamazoo and should have arrested Proud Boys. We have the ability to go back, and we are looking back at video to identify and follow up with charges if there's the need for that. And we will do so if we're able.
The first thing I want to do is I want to thank you, Jim, and Mayor, for learning from early June about the importance of communicating. I would like to see us even communicate real time and as soon as possible. If there is something that we can just put a little mark in the dot in terms of making sure that we constantly revisit, we absolutely, positively have to constantly improve our communication. And that's true both in public safety, but that's true from us as commissioners and what we get. It's true of what we communicate as commissioners. It's true of what's coming from city administration and what people hear from our city. But it is absolutely inexcusable that people don't hear from our city in the immediate aftermath of a crisis. And the thing that I recognize is that there are going to be people when we're communicating right afterwards, and they're going to say, well, that was just a useless canned answer. They didn't answer any of my questions, but they need to see us and then we need to answer what we're able to answer. And what we can't answer, we need to be comfortable saying, we're going to get back to you as soon as possible because this is happening in real time and we don't have all the information, but this is what we know. I wanted to lift up for a second as well and just remind people, one of the members of the Michigan Observers Group lifted this up yesterday, but let's be very clear too about the Proud Boys visit. It wasn't just some random date that they picked. This is on the anniversary of Charlottesville and a death that occurred. They were here celebrating a death that occurred with Heather Heyer. I mean, how sick is that? And so, I think that just is all the more outraging from the community when you see that, that 9 people are arrested. They're all from the counter-protest side of a hate group who comes here, incites violence, and is doing so to celebrate the anniversary of an event of somebody being murdered by a vehicle. You start to understand why people are so upset and outraged. I just want to reiterate again the importance of the media and the importance of those observers there who are, like I say, I'll repeat this again, the guardrails of democracy. They are what are separating us from, the things that you're seeing in our country where, fascism is spreading and hatred is spreading. I mean, they are holding us and keeping the soul of this country together. I also just wanted to say this as well. I think we just have to do a better job of remembering that the community is at the heart of everything that we do, and you can't say there is no public in public safety without the public. And to just reiterate that again, that there are lessons learned from this, and there are such great opportunities to listen and to be visible and to process with people who are a part of it. And I still haven't seen those opportunities since early June to get out with the community and connect with the community and get their perspectives. And certainly things have been shared and relayed through us, but I can't emphasize enough that has to happen. And if it hasn't happened, there's been a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of crises happening, but that can't be an excuse for why we go much longer without doing that community listening and input and healing together with the community.
You can take away the details of what people believe in. Everybody has the right to their beliefs. But when you have a group that is known for a history of violence, that response should be accordingly. And it really concerns me and troubles me that there was a response made that was based on a situation where the parties that were going to be present did not have that history of violence, were not, labeled as such by Southern Poverty Law Center, and so on and so forth. So that was the first thing that I didn't understand. And moving forward, I don't understand as far as that being a learning experience, I don't understand all of the intricacies of public safety, and I don't have any judgment on, I don't know what their job is supposed to be all the way, but I do know that certain things just don't make sense. And that was one of those things that just didn't make sense. And that's one of those things that, I would like to know from you, City Manager Rissimo, what did you feel about the response to what happened, just based on that? And how exactly are we going to be certain that that's not going to happen in the future? And I just want to say that I understand there's learnings and things that have to happen.
Yeah.
No one is perfect, and that always has to be the case. So I'm certainly not opposed to that. But when when people's lives could potentially be at stake, the room for error is a little bit different than a normal situation. So just on that basis alone, I'd like to know your thoughts on that, just the strategy. And I do have some other questions after this.
Sure. I think, going back to my earlier comments, in hindsight, yes, this was a horrific group coming. The plans that were made, I think the learnings from the previous protests were, we prepared according to the event. We had, 100 plus officers ready. Going back in hindsight, maybe they should have been staged differently. It was an evolving situation, and it was mobile. So I would say that certainly can be something that we learn from, and just understand where their concerns could arise.
This just goes back to something that I brought up a few meetings ago, and it continuously comes up. One is accountability, and two is where is the opportunity for the community to be involved and how they are policed. I'm still not seeing those things happen, and those holes are detrimental for the community. As we've seen again, we've heard, from different commission meetings that there are groups of people who have very positive outcomes and positive experiences, and it's not like that for the entire community. And so where are we? When is that going to happen? I feel that we've had repeated meetings, we talk, and where is the action on the other end to say, this is going to stop, this is not going to happen anymore? I know you can't make 100% guarantees, but something a little better than what we have to go off of. And I'm going to leave it at that for right now.
Sure, and Vice Mayor, if I could, then, that was a component of the action plan that I presented in June. The plan was to have CSPRAB assist in that. That understanding has occurred, and now it's scheduling those times, and I will make sure that those are accelerated, given where we are today, and they happen as soon as possible.
I think if there's a mistake that the city of Kalamazoo made in the planning around the Proud Boys coming to town is that we deferred to a white man to help shape our response to this, what ended up being a visit to Kalamazoo last Saturday. We ignored or we should have rather, listened to Black leaders in our community who, as the city manager referenced, lifted up the fact that the Klan did come to Kalamazoo years ago, and there was a model and a best practice in place in terms of how to deal with the Klan. And instead of listening to those leaders that, in so many words, said don't give oxygen to this group, don't allow them to, fracture our community anymore, we followed the lead of white leaders who established a counter-protest in the same vicinity as where we knew that the Proud Boys were going to be visiting. When will we have the ability to issue arrest warrants to any Proud Boy members that we have on video that we know have committed an act of crime? And what are we going to do to ensure that the prosecuting attorney makes sure that he's actually prosecuting these cases and not dropping the cases? Because we've seen countless times where the prosecuting attorney has not taken up charges or deferred them back to the city attorney, and that's unacceptable. So I think that would be my first question is, there are hundreds of videos out there. When and how are we going to execute the issuing of warrants to arrest Proud Boy members, regardless of what state they reside in?
Sure, Commissioner Knott. As I indicated, there are a lot of videos out there, a lot of footage. I just want to take the opportunity to ask the public if they have any footage they believe will help us identify folks. To do so, get that to us ASAP. I'm going to defer to the city attorney about the prosecutor and that process of it, but I understand from what happened in Grand Rapids that Saturday before our events occurred, like May the 30th, they were issuing arrest warrants, weeks after the event, based on review of video footage, identifying who that is, and then going and pursuing an arrest warrant. So we will undertake that as best we can and hold people accountable to the actions that they made that day that are criminal.
Thing that I'll say as a former coach is that we prepare for a game. Should we lose that game, we go back and look at film, and we prepare again to engage again. And so I would encourage us to look at film, and then also make sure that the body cam footage is released to the to at least to us and to the public as a method of communication, greater communication about what went on Saturday. And I'd be interested in hearing the answers to Commissioner Knott's questions about the homeless and how they were protected and whether they were attacked. Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. We have to keep going. This is our community, and we are better than this. And I would love to see us continue this conversation and see the big picture and remember who we are and remember whose we are, to use a bit of religious language. We are one. This community deserves better, and I appreciate my fellow commissioners, Chris and Aaron, all of you, for speaking and for asking and for holding people accountable. I think we are all accountable, and I think that we continue to have to hold our public safety department to a higher standard. And Vice Mayor Griffin, yes, we do need to learn how to police these communities. I've heard from several of my constituents around the community that we want to be policed, and they want to have a say in how they're policed. So hopefully we continue to have this civil conversation.
Vice Mayor mentioned that why is it that the response, why didn't we respond to them as an organization that has a history of violence? And I just want to acknowledge, to everybody here that that's a piece of what's wrong with the system, is they view African Americans as having a history of violence. And so whether we bring something peaceful or not, we still get looked through the same lens. And that's a reality, that's a fact, that's not an arid feeling, that's statistically proven. That is something that I think a lot of individuals are feeling as it pertains to what took place in June and what we see now. And I stand behind our mayor, David Anderson, I stand behind this statement that I am asking that unequivocally every individual who was arrested, every single charge should be dropped. Anything less than an unprovoked bodily harm caused to somebody else, every single charge should be dropped, no questions asked. Instances, we would give them a verbal warning. I ask that we give a verbal warning. So I won't really get into the details. I had opportunity to actually make it down to the protest. I got there relatively late when the individuals probably were already inside of the parking structure at the Radisson. I won't really get into the details, but I at least want to provide my colleagues of, some of the overarching things that I felt were issues. One of which is, city manager, we have to get a better way to communicate. I know I was there when they were setting up the police zone. I was 30 feet away, I was 20 feet away, I was 10 feet away, and it was barely distinguishable what they were saying. I think a piece of it is, they're using a blowhorn, and if it's pointed that way, they can hear it, but these individuals can't. Also, in the same sentence, there is so many different things going on, so many different voices going on, so much noise going on at the exact same time that it's very hard to understand what was being said. So I can honestly say, my word alone, specifically being there, when that police zone was set up in place on the corner of Rose and Michigan, it was not distinguishable, and I was literally 15, 20 feet away. What I observed, although late in the observation, so I give a disqualifier that by the time I got there, the Proud Boys were, jumping in their vehicles and leaving. And it did feel as if we were aggressively approaching our citizens. But an overarching thing that I think our community took away from this is that they were aggressive with our citizens and passively aggressive with the Proud Boys. And I think that's a distinct issue. And I truly feel that two of the individuals who were arrested is a supporting factor with that statement, due to one being from Mlive and another individual being from legal counsel, just there to be a viewer. I can definitively say that I saw one of the videos, and if there's violence around, I'm not sure why you would remove an individual who's a nuisance at best. And so, to me, I know that we'll be doing an after-action review, but city manager, I would advise, and I would ask you, or I'm asking you, will we also add these events to the independent investigation team that will be reviewing the events from June?
Yeah, we certainly can. The RFP is still being written, so I believe we can adjust it for that.
And like I said, I think the major reason behind having an independent body come in is, one, I even think that this will be a good opportunity to benchmark, how we responded to each other or each event, whether it be in June and now. But I think overarching, after action review is still an internal investigation of yourself. So how much of that, if there's a lack of trust, then the perception would be, even if the police did find anything that they did wrong, they wouldn't come out and be forthright as much as they should be, or communicating it in the way that they should. So for protection, or for at least a better outlook, I think it should be done independently. So I appreciate that piece of the commitment. Once again, to my commissioners, the accountability comes back to us. We have a job to do. A piece of that is protecting our community, and a piece of that is even protecting our city administration. And honestly, we failed at both. And, you know, a lot of you, I'm sorry, you're new to the commission, and this is a part of the responsibility that we have based upon the decisions that have been made since the beginning of this charter and the beginning of the city commission. And so, once again, I'm gonna drill into you. It's our responsibility. We have to find ways to ensure that our citizens are safe, and that our communication is strong, and that there's accountability when it comes to leadership within our city administration. Right, wrong, or indifferent. And when we don't have measurements in place or metrics in place, it's hard to pull something out of thin air and just say you were wrong for this. I can't hold somebody accountable for something I didn't express to them. And that's just a reality. And I know it was asked before by my colleagues that, you know, how do we get the community in on, you know, the how we want to be policed. And I think a huge piece of that is for them to give input on the things that's important and how do we measure that and what does that look like. And I think once all the parties that are involved with those measurements can come to an agreement, then there's not just accountability on the commission's part, but there's accountability on the citizens' part, right, wrong, or indifferent. And so I stand behind that wholeheartedly.